Charlie, you have someone else who has a question.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're all stacked up like at Logan. If you could state your where you're from and your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Stephanie Tabashnik, and I'm a resident of Waltham. I'm interested in whether you would support a single-payer financing system for healthcare for the state of Massachusetts.
Go ahead and say that one more time.
I'm interested in whether you'd support a single-payer healthcare system for the state of Massachusetts.
A single-parent welfare system?
Healthcare system.
Oh, health.
Are you? I think she's saying single payer.
Oh, single
healthcare.
payer.
Is that what you're
Oh,
trying to
okay.
say? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, let's get into healthcare. It certainly has been in the news a lot, and her question directly was a single-payer system for the Commonwealth. What would your position on that be? Let's start with Gary.
I'll start. I think that breeds corruption, having one payer, one company, one indemnity that insures everybody. That it gives too much control. Monopoly is not a good thing in this country. We need to keep our options open for competition. Eventually, I think it might seem like a good thing at first, but when you have one company that's billing you and there's no competition, I can guarantee you those bills will go up. Those expenses will go up.
Margie, do you mind if I just clarify the question the young lady asked? She was talking about government single-payer health care.
Oh,
I assume that she was talking. No, I assume she was talking about something like Medicare, which is a single-payer system
Oh, I mean.
for everybody.
Medicare for all? I'm not even sure what, you want to elaborate what you mean, or?
Well, let's.
We'll go to the next.
Okay, Jay, do you have any feeling about a single-payer system?
It's
The idea really that instead of having health insurance companies which have a significantly higher administrative cost than a government-run system, that you essentially expand Medicare or combine Medicare and Medicaid so that the government is the single third-party payer.
the way that I'm understanding it is, if you're going towards the one party that's going to be paying the bills, I just don't think that that's going to work out in any way. I know Canada has looked at a single government paying program there. It's just not something that I can see happening here in Massachusetts for it to be beneficial for the people here. My feeling is we have people coming from all around the world to get the health care here that we do provide. I understand that there are rising costs, but I don't think the single-payer health plan is going to be the answer to it.
John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the single-payer health care plan, as well as even the GIC, we've got to look at it over the long term. And certainly right now it's been a good savings for municipalities that have got in it, but we've got to watch it with a careful eye, that these costs don't get people into this, and you can get out of it as a municipality. So that's something that we really got to look for. But when you look at Medicare enrollment for retirees, the state mandates that people enroll in Medicare. But at the local municipal level, they're not. So those post-benefit employments are very, very high. If they're not, the people have paid into Medicare, and the municipalities have paid into it. So in Newton, for example, there was an article, if just 1/3 of the Medicare-eligible retirees in Newton were currently enrolled in Medicare and made the switch, it would save the town $15 million. So, those are the kind of cost savings that we need.
So in effect, it's a single payer for certain groups of people.
Correct.
Let's talk about this health insurance thing a little bit more. It's been in the news a lot lately with the revelations of an $11 million severance package for Cleve Killingsworth as he was being eased out of Blue Cross Blue Shield. We now find that the boards of directors of the health insurers are getting anywhere between $50,000 and $80,000 or more in fees for sitting on these nonprofits, and it's caused quite an uproar. What is your position on that? And should the health insurance companies be dealt with differently in state law? Should they not be dealt with as, well, right now they're not only nonprofits, but they're dealt with as charities. Do we need to change that system? John?
I agree. The nonprofits that people are making, getting a $12, $11 million golden parachute is what's got people in this country irate. We've got so much wasteful spending at the state level. We've had a probation department that exploded in costs that would happen right under our own government. We have Massport parking attendants that came out that were making $100,000 a year. These are the type of things that have people upset, and these are the type of things that we have to end. And even in government, with people working one day and get a year of credit for it, politicians, is wrong. But these are the type of wasteful spending that has brought us to the position that we're at today, and that we need to make these serious reforms.
Gary?
Of course, isn't it ironic that we're looking at a GIC program, which is the Group Insurance Commission, which is really a quasi-independent state authority, and we're putting our faith in that system, and we're saying that the Blue Cross and Blue Shield system is bad. That's kind of a role reversal. We're saying that the government system is a good one, and that the private Blue Cross Blue Shield system is a bad one. And basically because of the payment of a golden parachute to Mr. Killingsworth, and the other abuses on the board and the monies, the stipends that they've received. I'm just pointing out the irony of it, and I think the GIC, which is sort of like the same type of thing as Massport, the MTA, it's an authority. And we know what can happen at authorities. They can be abused. The governor has only so much control over the authority. It's not a constitutional department or an executive branch department, judicial or otherwise. It's an authority. But we're bringing people into it, and same with the health connector. It's a very similar situation. So my point is, I just think it's ironic that we're saying no to the private, and we're saying and bringing everybody back to the state. Pretty soon, the state will be the biggest insurer in the Commonwealth.
Well, implicit in that young woman's question, however, I think, is maybe a recognition that the administrative costs with the health insurance companies run something like 9.5%, whereas Mass Health, the administration costs 1.5%. Does that argue for looking again at these health insurers, the tax incentives that they get as nonprofits, and what do we need to do to rationalize the system? Jay?
Reorganization is the answer, obviously. The tables have to sit down and look at both sides, and just like you said, cost analysis is going to be a big example of how this can be determined, how we can change this. As John said, that $11 million parachute is just crazy. That's something that should never, ever, ever happen. The reorganization, taking them out of that, as you said, that little bubble, I would say, as a charitable organization, would definitely affect even the revenues coming back to the cities and towns as well.
I have a quick question for you that's a little bit different. Your district represents 3 communities, Newton, Waltham, and Watertown. In what ways are the interests of those 3 communities different from one another? Gary?
Well, I would say in very little ways, in few, if any. We're all people, we're all citizens of Massachusetts. The communities are within 10 square miles of each other, the districts that you're speaking of. Jay would probably say that his school system is better than Waltham's, but I would say that, ours is better than yours. You would say that your Watertown school system, look, all I'm trying to say is, we're all citizens, we all have the same needs. We want safe streets, we want to be secure in our homes, we want clean water, we want affordable health care, we want our state government to be accountable and transparent. Those are, and we want a good education for our kids, both in elementary, in the high school, and all the way through the state college and university system. All of us want the same, there's really no difference, in my opinion, between any of the three communities.
Jay?
I feel the same way. We have police officers, firefighters, teachers, and all of them live in all three communities, as well as people from the private sectors as well, not just from the working for the municipalities and government. We're all striving for the same thing, to make sure that our cities and towns are safe and our children get quality education. I think that's happening in all three
John, do
communities.
you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. I think there's certainly demographic differences between the three communities. Certainly, us in Watertown are very jealous of the commercial tax base that Waltham enjoys, and that helps alleviate.
It's because of me.
And we certainly don't look at Newton and say, oh, we don't want your taxes, though. Certainly, the difference that Waltham can provide with the commercial tax base with the infrastructure on 128 is really a huge difference for a community, and able to build the 8 new schools that they have in Waltham, and has really alleviated a lot off the residential tax base. But that is just the makeup of those communities. But we share some very common things like the Charles River. That is such a great natural resource that we have to be concerned about stormwater runoff, and it's something that I use with my family every day. So those are just that's the Pleasant Street corridor that connects through Waltham into River Street, and the developments that happen there, that affects Newton and Watertown and Waltham. And so, that's something that I think in this position, we can work together as the three communities.
It's interesting that you mentioned the river, because a year ago, with the flooding of last March, there was some inter-community tension about who was releasing floodgates and what the impact was on the neighboring communities. Do you have any insight into what, as a state representative, you can do to facilitate regional cooperation when it comes to the Charles River?
We're downriver, so that was not us.
I saw you paddling. Gary?
Yeah, you're right. We had a major problem at the Moody Street Bridge. That bridge is, Council Logan might know, but it's probably 150, maybe older than that. And it has man-made locks. You have to get in the water to lift the locks to release water. And in the middle of that storm last March, in the middle of the raging water, we had state employees, one in particular, go in the water with scuba gear and tethered to the bridge and release the gate to help save the mill. So, Governor Patrick was there that day, and what I would say is that bridge needs attention, and just like many other bridges in our communities, Governor Patrick actually has allocated a good amount of money for infrastructure to over $3 billion. Both to municipalities and to projects, streets and bridges. So I'm hopeful that that's one bridge that will be repaired soon.
Jay?
In regards to the flooding issues, what happened downstream obviously affected all three communities here. I was speaking with folks that I was in one basement that had looking down at it, had 4 feet of water in it, and it just so happens that the governor was around. He did stop in all these communities, and he did work swiftly in regarding getting MEMA and FEMA involved, and both parties did. As a matter of fact, I know for one perfect example, even the tenants that were involved that were displaced were reimbursed for their displacements in some cases as well. But the communication, again, is going to have to be something that's going to have to be addressed. I think we have to be a little bit more proactive than reactive, and that's what's going to take us in the right direction, stepping forward.
Charlie?
Got another
What do you
question?
have?
Young woman is from Waltham, and she says that's the best city.
Hi, my name's Maureen Fowler. I'm from Waltham. This should be a really quick question. You are all three candidates represented public officials in your current communities. Would you resign from your current position on your city council or alderman or local position if you're elected as state rep?
Moderator?
Is that
Sorry.
I didn't want to jump the gun. but-
No.
I will answer that question. I would my term as city councilor in Watertown would end in December, and I would not run for re-election if I was awarded this position.
Gary?
Are the microphones on? You know, I've really gone back and forth with this issue. I'm not going to really say at this point, if I'm elected, that I would resign my position as city councilor for Ward 5. It's not fair to my constituents. I think there's a benefit to being both the Ward 5 city councilor and the state rep of the 10th Middlesex district. There is history with our city councilors in the past that they've assumed dual roles. But I can tell you this, I have a pretty busy practice that I've scaled back to manage this campaign. And it would be very difficult to have 3 hats if I was fortunate enough to be elected. But I would make that decision pretty quickly so that there could be viable candidates that, if I chose not to run for re-election for Ward 5, that I would put my constituents in good hands.
Jay?
Well, my first and foremost job, and the one I love, is being a police officer. I've done it for a long time, and I enjoy it immensely. It's been very rewarding for me.
I hear they need law enforcement in the legislature.
Well, by all means, here I am. With the Board of Aldermen and the state representative job, I don't know if I'd have the time that I could invest and be as effective as I possibly could. But I'm going to run for both. I'm going to give it my best shot. And if there is, in fact, the time well, here's the issue. I have to get by this primary first. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, if in fact I get by the primary, I have a very difficult decision to make. But I would be moving forward to help out the people of 3 communities, so I'd still be able to help out Newton as well. And hopefully that'll happen.
John, did you have anything?
Well, I just think with the state of this economy and the state of the state, we need a full-time advocate advocating for all 3 communities. And I would resign my position and concentrate fully on this.
Let me move into another subject area. Following scandals in both probation department hiring and parole board decision-making, what changes would you make in how those functions are implemented? Specifically, Governor Patrick wants these roles combined under the executive branch, and the judiciary believes that probation and parole are best integrated in the role of the judges in determining proper sentences. What approach to offender supervision do you prefer, and why? John?
Well, I think the probation and the mismanagement of probation and what happened on the parole board really struck a nerve with this community. And really, a lot of the blame goes to the politicians because they inflated a budget to take care of their friends and constituents that were looking for jobs. And certainly that has happened over the course of the last 20 or 30 years in those positions. But we need real reform. One thing that was floated was to make it like the police and fire,
Public safety.
public safety, but civil service, excuse me. And I don't think that's the way. I think we need to have real reform. And I would not want it under the judges. I think we need to get that away from that. I think that's still part of the problem. So I think we need real reform, and we need to look at the probation and parole board. You know, we had the parole board, president of the parole board, who was Governor Patrick's chauffeur. I mean, that's the stuff that's going on. And the death of that police officer in Woburn really struck a nerve, and it should have. And that's the stuff that we cannot have happen again.
Gary?
The scandal broke in the probation department when that report was released, and it revealed that it wasn't what you knew, it was who you know in the Department of Probation for years and years and years. What the fallout has been horrible, really, because the the probation officers, and many of whom are my friends, for the most part, are very decent, good, hardworking people. They're on the front lines, the probation officers in our district courts. They're the ones that deal with the convicted felons and criminals who are not incarcerated. So, but the problem has been when you don't have qualified candidates, because you have probation officers who were given the position without being qualified, they were not qualifying the defendants for criminal indigency properly. So it affected that department too, which is another one of Patrick's reforms, which I'm probably going to ask me later. But as far as Governor Patrick and his consolidation of the two departments, parole and probation, into the Department of Reentry and Adult Probation, I agree with it. The judiciary has relinquished its right to control probation because of the scandal. Bring it to the executive branch and let Governor Patrick handle it.
Jay?
I think the executive office should have a handle on it. Bringing the two together, I think is going to save the state money. But the other thing we have to look at, how about true sentencing? We might not need to have as many probation officers that we do have right now. Excuse me, if we did have the true sentencing in place. We can reform prisoners in the prisons right now to come out as decent human beings without having to give them the opportunity to come out and to be able to leave their sentence early. I think if they really knew that there was a true sentencing and they were going to look at the seriousness of the crime and they were going to have to do the seriousness of the time, we might see a different community out there. As far as the parole board goes, I think that was a great decision, and I'm happy that the governor did ask them all to step down.
Apropos of our sentencing and overcrowded prisons, to what extent do you think that we need to take a look at our mandatory sentences, which frequently keep nonviolent offenders, frequently those involved in drug offenses, in prison for extended periods of time? Are those situations ones that we should be looking at in terms of modifying the sentences?
I'll handle that.
Okay, Gary?
I'll handle that. That just sends the wrong message. I really don't agree with Governor Patrick on this one. He's suggesting that minimum mandatory sentences are where you have maybe a drug dealer who is dealing in a school zone, which is within 1,000 feet of a school. They might receive up to 3 years minimum mandatory sentencing. And now, if a gun was not involved, then perhaps that drug dealer would be released early or would not receive a minimum mandatory sentence. If you recall, when minimum mandatory sentences were invoked, it was because judges were abusing their discretion in sentencing criminals. We need minimum mandatory sentencing. I think it sends the wrong message to our community that we're not tough on crime by suggesting that we should not impose minimum mandatory sentencing. I think what the governor is also proposing is that by releasing some drug offenders early, that we'll free up some prison space, and we won't have to, and then we'll end up closing 2 prisons. I just don't agree with his logic, and it shouldn't be an economic decision. It should be a public safety decision.
John, your feeling?
Well, this has really hit a crossroads because right now our prison's at 150% capacity. So then it needs to be serious reform. To be able to say that we're not going to keep these people nonviolent offenders in, we've got to figure out a system. They're going to invest in more prisons, but right now we're at 150% capacity. So something has to give, and we have to look at how we're sentencing the nonviolent people and see what is the best way through treatment and through job creation that we can get them back into the workforce if they're not violent. But violent offenders certainly have to be given the maximum sentence.
Can I follow up on that?
Very briefly, because
Go ahead, go to the
all
audience. That's fine.
right. Charlie, one quick last audience question.
All right, we may have to do a flip of coin because they both asked different questions, or they're both going to ask different questions. Do we want to maybe just do them both and then just go right down the line real fast? Or?
Okay, why don't we do that?
Okay. Ladies first.
Oh, come on, folks. We're
All right,
the
either way,
clock
let's
is
go for
ticking.
it. Have a seat.
Hi, my name's Rhonda Bourne. I'm a member of the Democratic State Committee. And just one quick comment and then a question. We really need to hang on to the seat, so I'd really ask the people who are running for the seat.
And the question.
Maybe just inform themselves a little bit more about the issues. And my question is that the governor is proposing cutting 160 beds from the current inpatient capacity of the Department of Mental Health, which is about 1/4 of its inpatient capacity. So I just want to know how each of you stand on that issue. Thank you.
You want to start with Jay?
Well, I would hope that we could find the funding not to cut something like that. Mental health is a very important place in the state of Massachusetts. I would look to try to find the revenues to keep those 160 beds in place. I'm sure there's other places where we can make cuts so we can save those 160 beds.
Gary?
I agree.
I also agree. The mental health, I mean, in a tight budget like that, we need to protect our less vulnerable. And we cannot, put these people out in the street without the proper care and that they deserve, because they are less vulnerable and we need to advocate for them.
Quick round before we go to our closings.
Hang on, just the other
right.
one here. Okay, your name and what city, please?
My name is Bill Fowler from Waltham. The question is, and I'm sure you must know, last year the governor closed Sandra's Lodge up at the Fernald, which is the family homeless shelter. We now have over 30 families, more than 50 children living in a closed hotel on Totten Pond Road. The conditions aren't very good. They have a microwave oven and a little refrigerator. The ceilings, several people have had them falling on them while they were sleeping. The conditions are really horrible. What do you think of putting people up in hotels, and what will you do about fixing the problem?
John?
As to the previous question, we need to protect our less vulnerable. No child should grow up in a hotel. And I would advocate strongly that never happens.
Gary?
What's happening, I don't know why the Patrick administration is cutting some of these services. I was looking, he's also cutting $23 million from emergency homeless shelters in this budget. He's been pushing, his administration has been pushing to sell the Fernald and to transfer the Fernald patients elsewhere. We in Waltham are very concerned about what's happening at the Fernald Development Center. Representative Stanley filed legislation to create a committee of which the 10th Middlesex District representative is on to determine the outcome of that 200-acre site. It's extremely important that the 10th Middlesex District representative be involved in that Fernald site and what happens to those patients. So I don't like the trend that's going on with the Patrick administration, with the $23 million that he's cut from the homeless shelters, and his reform is that it's housing first, but there's no plan. So I agree, it's a bad cut.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
There's no time that I would ever like to see families in desirable conditions, and especially having to live under one room in a hotel room. That's just not fair, and it's not healthy, and it's not the way that we should be doing business. The Fernald, like Gary said, the committee's got to do their due diligence and see what exactly we can get, and if we can open that building up again.
Thank you. We are winding down now, and each candidate will have a minute to wrap up and drive home those last points and leave us with final impressions. We'll start at this end with Jay.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. As a police officer, as I said previously, I've been able to go out and work with the public. Prior to that, I was a small businessman doing the same thing. That's where I feel my best and where I do my best work, when I'm out speaking with the public and I'm out there one-on-one, face-to-face with the folks that are having their issues and they need to speak about every day. Some folks may think that, well, that guy's got this, it's kind of a small issue, it's something that really shouldn't be taking the time with. Well, you know what? It's maybe not a small issue to them. Obviously, they're making and taking the time out that want to sit down and talk with me. I should be, as a representative, easy enough and accessible enough to go out there, sit down, talk with the folks, and find out if we can come to a solution, a conclusion to what their issue is. So please, remember April 12th, and I'd be very, very appreciative for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Gary?
Thank you, Marjorie, for moderating the event. Thank you to the Democratic City Committees for organizing the forum/debate, and thank you all for coming. Your state representative should be your advocate, your voice in state government. Your state representative should be someone that you can trust, someone that will respond to your needs, someone who has your best interests at heart. For 13 years, as the Waltham City Councilor, I've advocated for my community, successfully, I might add. As chairman of the Connors Pool Committee, I fought for years to reopen the Nickel Pool on the corner of Newton and River Street. By our perseverance and advocacy, there was a groundbreaking in November of 2010, and the Connors Memorial Pool will reopen in July 2011. As chairman of the Municipal Building Reuse Committee on the City Council, I advocated and recommended that the old Thomas P. Hills Elementary School on Main Street be used for a senior center. In 2002, we celebrated the opening of the new William F. Stanley Senior Center, a state-of-the-art...
Can you wrap it up?
Oh, senior center. Oh, wow. I did a lot of other things also. Go on my website and check it out. Just want to say, if elected, I'll speak loudly and confidently to defend your interests in the 10th Middlesex District. I hope I ask for your vote on April 12th. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. John?
I'll keep mine to my 1 minute. I am a father, a husband, a son, a brother, a homeowner, a small businessman, a coach, and a town council member. I have the experience of being laid off and needing to find a job, as well as employing people in our community. I want to bring all of that experience to Beacon Hill and serve you in the House of Representatives. I am a communicator. I am someone who will roll up their sleeves and work hard for this district. I cannot forget where I came from, because I am still there. I know tonight that there is only a limited amount of time to speak on these issues and many other important issues that we are all facing. I am happy to stay here tonight at the conclusion of this event and speak with all of you and ask you any follow-up questions that you have. I will stay here until the janitors kick me out. I will represent this district with hard work and integrity, and I ask you to vote for John Lawn on April 12th.
Thank you so much. We are indeed out of time. Thanks very much to the candidates for their enthusiastic and engaged participation and for being willing to put themselves forward in the public arena. Thanks to the Newton, Watertown, and Waltham Democratic committees for their efforts, especially Janet Sturman, Steve Owens, and Robert Logan. Thanks to you, Charlie Shapiro, wherever you are out there, for your help in facilitating audience questions. And thanks to all of our audience here and at home. Don't forget to go to the polls on April 12th for the primary and make your opinions heard. Good evening.